Chapter 2, Sloka 60. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manaha. In the next few verses, Bhagavan is revealing an incidental fact. The main topic under discussion is Sthitaprajna Lakshanani, the characteristics of a Sthitaprajna. One of the characteristics of a Sthitaprajna is mastery over senses as well as mastery over the mind. When this point has surfaced, Bhagavan finds it relevant to point out the importance of gaining mastery over the mind and the senses in the pursuit of self-knowledge. Without disciplining our senses and the mind, one cannot get self-knowledge. Therefore, it is important to discipline the mind as well as the senses. If one does not discipline one's mind and senses, what damage it causes in the pursuit of knowledge, Bhagavan explains it. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini. The indriyas are pramathini. They are turbulent, restless. Restlessness is the nature of senses. Impulsiveness is the nature of senses. Therefore, He Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Yatataha api purushasya, even a person who is striving hard, Yatataha means he is making effort in the direction of moksha. Yatataha purushasya api, and not only he is making effort, vipaschitaha, he is a wise man, He has viveka. He knows what is right and wrong, knows what is good and bad. Yet the indriyas are strong enough to pull away his mind, to divert his mind. Manaha prasabham haranti. They forcefully take away his mind from the objective. They divert his mind from the spiritual goal. Therefore, if one allows to remain, if one allows the indriyas to do what they like without disciplining them, then one cannot advance in the spiritual pursuit. Next sloka. Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashe hi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. Therefore, since the indriyas that are not restrained cause problem, therefore Bhagavan suggests a spiritual seeker, Tani sarvani sanyamya, restraining all the indriyas, disciplining all the indriyas. Disciplining means not allowing to go where they like, not allowing the indriyas to do what they like. Instead, the indriyas should do what we want them to do. One should be able to direct one's indriyas as per one's will. If I have to focus on the Shravana, I should be able to focus on it. My ears should hear only the class. It should not be pulled by any external noise or any other sound outside. That is the nature of a disciplined sense. So, Tani Sarvani Sanyamya, disciplining all the senses. Disciplining the senses involves effort. One has to make one's willpower, make use of one's willpower. Otherwise, the senses cannot be disciplined. When the senses pull me away, I should be able to tell my senses, I will not allow you to do it. That is how one has to discipline the senses. Tani sarvani sanyamya matparaha. There is the word matparaha. According to Madhusudana Saraswati, this word matparaha explains the way to discipline the senses. How can I discipline my senses? Krishna says, be matparaha. Accept Ishvara as the only goal and cultivate devotion to Ishvara. Spend time in thinking about Ishvara. Spending time in thinking about Ishvara is the best way to gain mastery over the senses. And how to spend time with Ishvara? The best way is Namasmaranam, chanting Bhagavan's name. One can choose any name of Bhagavan, Rama, Krishna, or Shiva, Govinda. Any name is fine. Chant Bhagavan's name. And while chanting Bhagavan's name, think about Bhagavan. The chant facilitates thoughts dealing with the Bhagavan. When we chant Bhagavan's name, we can also think about Bhagavan. That is how one can spend time with the Bhagavan. One can cultivate devotion to Bhagavan. One can cultivate dependence on Bhagavan. That is matparaha. And being matpara, being bhagavatparaha, committed to Bhagavan, devoted to Bhagavan, one can gain mastery over the senses. Yukta asita, and not only mastery over the senses, Krishna talks about mastery over the mind also. Yuktaha. Yuktaha means samahitaha, keeping the mind focused. Focused in the spiritual pursuit. To remain focused in the spiritual pursuit, the mind has to be disciplined. The mind keeps presenting various ideas, keeps presenting various thoughts and emotions. Sometimes there are desires. The desires pull the mind away. Sometimes there are worries. The worries pull the mind away. Therefore, the way to keep the mind focused, the way to restrain the mind is also given by the same word matparaha. How to discipline the mind? The best way is thinking about Ishvara. When we cultivate dependence on Ishvara, we become free from desires. The mind becomes free from desires. Therefore, the mind does not get pulled towards various objects. Also, the mind becomes free from insecurity. When the mind is free from insecurity, it does not keep worrying about what will happen in future. Therefore, matparaha gives the means to cultivate discipline over mind as well as senses. Vashe hi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. Mastery over mind and senses is the means to attain steadiness in self-knowledge. Vashehi yasyendriyani. Yasya indriyani vashe. One whose senses are disciplined. Vashe. Vashe means you have a say over your senses. They are in your vasha. They are in your vasha means you have a say over them. They do not take you for a ride. Instead, you have a say over them. Then it is possible to get the status of sthita prajna. Tasya prajna pratisthita. His knowledge is established. He gets a steadiness in self-knowledge. He becomes a sthita prajna. Therefore, to become a sthita prajna, one has to make effort in the direction of gaining mastery over the mind and the senses. Shloka 62. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Kamat krodho bhijayate. Now Krishna explains the disasters that a mind can cause if the mind is allowed to do what it wants to do. If one does not keep a watch on his mind, if one does not make constant effort to restrain his mind, where he will end up? This person gives a free rein to his mind. He tells the mind, you do what you like to do. It is all your wish. I will do what my mind tells me to do. Then the mind starts thinking about one object or another. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. The mind thinks about a sense object. Vishaya dhyana, not Ishvara dhyana, but Vishaya dhyana. Instead of meditating on Ishvara, the mind thinks about sense object. When it thinks about a particular sense object, sangasteshu upajayate, teshu sangaha upajayate. He gets a sangha. Madhusudana Saraswati says, sangha means Shobhana Adhyasa. Shobhana Adhyasa means you think the object can promise happiness. You start thinking that the object can make you happy. If you get the object, it will give you happiness. Therefore, it is nice to have it. It will make me happier. It will make my life better. You start getting this kind of thought. You come across a new model of smartphone. Somewhere you saw an advertisement of a new model of smartphone which has just arrived in the market. Then your eyes fall on the picture of the smartphone, and then you start thinking. You start reading about it in Google, and then you start thinking all its features. It's a review. When you read its features, it's a review. Then the mind starts thinking, it is good, it can make me happy. My other smartphone has already become old. How nice it is to have a new smartphone. This is called Sangha. You start looking upon the object as a source of happiness. And when you look upon the object as a source of happiness, it leads to kama. desire. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Sangha leads to kama, desire. Desire means I want to have it. It is another stage, another stage. The first stage, it is nice to have it. And the second stage is I want to have it. Sangha means it is nice to have it because it will make me happier if I have it. This thinking is Sangha. When the Sangha becomes stronger, it leads to Kama. I should have it. And when there is desire, I try to get the object. I make effort to get the object. I ask my friend or my parents or somebody to get me the smartphone because I don't have money to buy the smartphone. So I ask my friend to get the smartphone for me. It is an expensive smartphone, iPhone, costing 2 lakh rupees. I ask my friend. Then he tells me, I will not give it. He refuses to give it to me. Then I get angry. Kamat krodho bhijayate. Kama leads to krodha. Desire leads to anger. And it doesn't stop there. It continues. Next shloka. Krodhat bhavati sammohaha. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha. Buddhi nashat pranashyati. Krodhat bhavati sammohaha. It is next step. Krodha leads to sammoha. Sammoha means a temporary loss of viveka. When I am angry, I do not realize what I should do. I do not realize what is right. Instead, I act impulsively. I think impulsively and I might as well act impulsively. I feel that I should punch the other person because I am angry. For that moment, for that period, I do not realize that I should not do it. My voice of viveka, my voice of right understanding is suppressed by the impulse, the impulse of anger. It is called sammoha. And because of sammoha, I act impulsively. I might as well punch the other person, or I might shout at the other person. When I shout at the other person, some other people might tell me, you have made a mistake, you shouldn't have done so. But then I try to justify my act, not only in front of others, I also justify my act for myself also. My mind starts deceiving me. The mind starts justifying my wrong action because I don't want to feel guilty about what I have done. I don't want to admit my mistake. Therefore, the mind starts justifying the wrong action. When the mind starts justifying the wrong action, all the principles of ethics, all the principles of right and wrong, all the principles of dharma that I have learnt before, that I got educated with, everything becomes useless for me. I become an unethical person because all my learning of right and wrong, they are falsified by myself now. And Krishna calls it Smriti Vibhramaha. Sammohat Smriti Vibhramaha. Smriti Vibhrama means I do not remember what is right and wrong. My memory of Viveka, my memory of right and wrong, they are blocked. Because I have a different interpretation of right and wrong, presented by my own mind, presented by my own subjectivity. And it blocks all my previous learning, my previous understanding of the ethics. And this leads to another phase of my spiritual downfall. Smriti Bhramshat Buddhi Nashaha. When Smriti Bhramsha happens, then there is Buddhi Nasha. The Buddhi, the mind, is incapable of rectifying itself. Sometimes when we make a mistake, we may correct ourselves. But once the Smriti Bhramsha has happened, the mind is reluctant to correct itself. Also, even if someone else tries to correct me, I am reluctant to correct myself. My mind is reluctant to correct itself. It is called buddhi nasha. Suppose your electronic gadget or any other equipment, if there is some problem, then you try to fix it. But sometimes it gets irreparably damaged. You cannot fix it by any means. You try to fix it by yourself. You are not able to do it. Then you call a mechanic. Even he is not able to do it. Then what has happened? Nasha. The particular electronic gadget is nashta. It is gone. Then you have to dispose it and get a new one. Similarly, the buddhi also ends up in such a loss. Buddhi becomes useless. Instead, it becomes more hazardous than useful, because it cannot be corrected by itself, and it is not open for correction from anywhere outside also. It is called buddhi nasha. And then pranashyati, buddhi nashat pranashyati. Because of buddhi nasha, the person himself is lost. Pranashyati. He has undergone a spiritual downfall. From the spiritual point of view, he is lost. Then it will take a long time to recover. Maybe after a few janmas. Therefore, Krishna says, one should make constant effort to keep the mind away from impulsive behavior, to keep the mind away from thinking of sense objects. Sloka 64. Ragadvesha viyuktaistu Vishayanindriyaischaran Atmavasyairvidheyatma Prasadamathigacchati. So far, Bhagavan explained with an undesirable example, a negative example. If one does not restrain the mind, what does he lose? It was explained so far. Now Bhagavan explains the desirable example, a positive example. what one gains if one disciplines the mind and the senses. रागद्वेष वियुक्तैः विषयैः इंद्रिया रागद्वेष वियुक्तैः इंद्रियैः विषयान् चरन्. A man of disciplined senses, even when his senses are disciplined, he will continue to interact with the objects because he has to conduct his life. Therefore, he will interact with the objects. But even when he is interacting with the objects, he is not overpowered by the ragadvesha. He is not overpowered by the strong likes and dislikes. Therefore, ragadvesha viyuktaihi indriyaihi, with the senses that are free from ragadvesha, the senses that are not pulled by the likes and dislikes, the senses that are not under the spell of the impulses, that kind of indriyas, that kind of senses, they are the disciplined senses. Indriyaihi vishayan charan. He interacts with the sense objects. He will also see, he will also hear, he will speak to others, he will eat, he will smell, he does everything. He does all the activities that are required. But in the meantime, he is not under the spell of ragadvesha. Such person, atmavashyahi, his indriyas are under his control. He has a say over his indriyas. He has a say over his senses. The senses do not pull him. The senses do not take him for a ride. Instead, he has a say over his senses. Atmavashyahi vidheyatma. Also, his mind is disciplined. He has mastery over the mind. Vidheyatma prasadammadhigacchati. Such a person attains prasada. Prasada means prasannata, quietude of mind. Prasada literally means quietude of mind. The mind becomes quiet. The mind becomes free from turbulences. And such a mind is suitable for the pursuit of Atma. Such a mind is suitable for the pursuit of self-knowledge. Therefore, disciplining the mind and senses serve as a preparation for self-knowledge. 65. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate प्रसन्नचेतसो ह्याशु बुद्धिः पर्यवतिष्ठते. प्रसन्नचेतसो ह्याशु बुद्धिः पर्यवतिष्ठते. प्रसन्नचेतसः, one who has attained a quiet mind, a composed mind, he is called prasanna chetaha. A person with a composed mind. His mind does not get disturbed by various sense objects. His mind does not get disturbed by the changes in the external ambience. Such a person is prasanna chetaha. Prasanna chetasaha buddhihi ashu paryavatishthate. He gets knowledge quickly. The self-knowledge becomes steady quickly. Ashu. Ashu means quickly, without much delay. Buddhif paryavatishthate. The self-knowledge becomes steady. He assimilates the self-knowledge. Therefore, prasade sarvadukkhanam hanirasyopajayate. Prasade, when there is prasada, when mind becomes quiet through proper disciplining of the mind and senses, then as a result of steady self-knowledge, he gets freedom from all dukkha. He gets freedom from all sorrow. Sarva dukkhanam asya hanihi upajayate. All dukkhas, all emotional problems, they get destroyed. He becomes free from all emotional disturbances because of the power of self-knowledge. Shloka 66. Nasti buddhirayuktasya न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयतः शान्तिः अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्. अयुक्तः. Ayuktaha is a person who is not yukta. Yukta means a person with a disciplined mind and senses. A person with focused mind and senses is called yuktaha. If one's mind is not disciplined, if one's mind is not focused, then he is ayuktaha. If one is ayukta, then he cannot pursue the self-knowledge. He cannot practice contemplation. Nachayuktasya bhavana. An ayukta does not have bhavana. He cannot contemplate. He cannot abide in self-knowledge. He cannot make effort to abide in self-knowledge. Here bhavana means nididhyasana. He cannot do nididhyasana. Therefore, nasti buddhirayuktasya. An ayukta cannot get self-knowledge. He cannot assimilate self-knowledge. Ayuktasya buddhihi nasti. And if he does not have atmajnana, if he does not have self-knowledge, he cannot have shanti. Nacha bhavayata shantihi. One who does not abide in self-knowledge, he cannot get shanti. He cannot have peace of mind. Ashantasya kutas sukham. If the mind is not free, if the mind has not attained peace, then how can one have happiness? Ashantasya kutas sukham. Without shanti, sukha is not possible. Sukha and shanti, they go together. Here, according to Madhusudana Saraswati, buddhi comes first and then comes bhavana. Buddhi means the knowledge of the self arrived at by Shravana and Manana. By means of Shravana and Manana, you get a conviction regarding the truth of the self. I am Brahman. I have no doubt. You get this conviction. It is called buddhi. So first comes buddhi. Ayukta cannot have buddhi. Means ayukta cannot even get conviction regarding the self. And buddhi has to be followed by bhavana. Bhavana means nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam is a deliberate effort to cultivate abidance in the knowledge. And this ayukta cannot practice bhavana. He cannot do nididhyasanam. He cannot abide in the knowledge. Therefore, he will not have Shanti. All the emotional disturbances, they will not go away. He will continue to be vulnerable to all the emotional problems, all the psychological problems. Therefore, he cannot be happy. Ashantasya kutas sukham. And Ashanta cannot be happy, means he cannot get moksha. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi.